Investigation 3, and we'll start off with problem 1.1. So where are we going, Maroon math students? Where we're going is to learn about some new math terms that are going to open up the left of the number line, numbers less than 0, or if we have a vertical number line, numbers below 0. So one of the first things you should do is make sure that you're understanding what the vocabulary words are from the investigation. So we'll look at absolute value, that just means how far from 0. Improper fraction, that's when the numerator is greater than the denominator. A mixed number is when we have a whole number attached to a fraction. And an opposite just refers to a number's opposite on a number line, either vertical or horizontal. So our focus question is, how can the number line help you to think about fractions greater than 1 and less than 0? You'll work through it with your group, asking and answering questions to students, and when you finish with the book problem, you go on and do your packets, and then we always follow up with some practice on Khan Academy. Consider these questions before moving on. Consider these questions before moving on. So if you consider those questions, question number 1 basically is saying, if a highway begins at 0, 0 on a number line, and mile markers are located every 15 miles, where is 95 located? Well, if mile markers were every 15 miles, 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90, 105, where would 95 be located? Well, 95 would be located somewhere between 90 and 105. Sorry about the sloppy writing here. My Apple pen has died. Number 2, think about what you need to do to represent 12 3/4 as a fraction. So how do you take 12 3/4 as a fraction? Well, 12 3/4 is a mixed number. So 12 3/4 as a fraction means turn into an improper fraction. So we say 12 times 4 is 48, plus 3 is 51. 51 total fourths. So 51 fourths would be a fraction. How can you represent 12 in order to combine it with 3/4? So really, isn't that asking how many 3/4 would be in 12? So if you take 12 3/4, there's 51 fourths in 12 3/4. So that's how you would combine it. You would take 12, figure out how many 3/4 are in 12. There's 51 fourths. And if we needed to combine that with 3 more fourths, we would say 51 fourths plus 3 more fourths would be 54 fourths. 54 fourths. Last question. How many thirds make up a whole? Well, if you think about a whole, 0 and 1, and you divide this into 3 parts, we would have 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. So that's a little math background for you to get you ready for 3.1, the next lesson. So on page 62 of your book, you will read about extending the number line, making sure you understand what a mixed number and an improper fraction are. For problem on page 63, it goes into opposites. And here's an example. The opposite of 2.5 is -2.5. The opposite of 5 is -5. So opposites are just on the other side of 0. And they work with decimals, fractions, mixed numbers, and improper fractions. And the last math concept here is absolute value, and this may be something new to you, but absolute value you'll catch on quickly. Whenever you see 2 bars, and let's say there's a 5 in there, you read that as what's the absolute value of 5, and all that means is how far away, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, how far away from 0 is a number. So you would just count backwards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the absolute value of 5 is 5. That just means how far from 0 is this number. So these bars, we say that as absolute value. All right, absolute value. Well, what if we had, what's the absolute value of negative 5? Negative 5, so we say negative 1, negative 2, 3, 4, 5. The absolute value of negative 5, oops, that just means how far from 0? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the absolute value of any negative number will be its positive, 5. So in this problem, 3.1, label your paper. You're going to be doing some marking on a number line and putting in different fractions and mixed numbers, finding opposites for us. E is a good problem because E deals with a vertical number line, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then these would all be negative numbers. So it's just another way of looking at a number line. Sorry for the sloppy, this stylus is terrible. So they'll be doing some fishing, and they'll be talking about, I think, a bird's height. So birds fly above the ground would represent 0. Fishing, this portion right here would be 0, and then beneath the water level would be negative numbers. That's a good. Okay, so I think